means of doing this. The certificate contains information which the seeker server already knows, in which the controller presents that certificate to the server. The server recognizes it as one it's allowed to exchange data with. One of the pieces of information that is within that certificate is an expiration date. And after that expiration date passes, that certificate is no longer valid. Legacy iSTAR controllers ship with a default TLS 1.2 certificate pre-installed within the core programming of the controller so that they could easily establish a trusted communication with the Secure 9000 server. And like other certificates, it has an expiration date. That date is February 18th of 2026, and that's what we're here to talk about. The process of checking the certificate with a server is pretty easily illustrated if we use an analogy of having an ID card and walking into a building. Everybody should be familiar with that within the industry that we all work in, so I like that as an analogy. If I walk into a building with a card and I go up and I scan my card and it's valid, it works. If that card is expired, though, it's not going to let me in. Now, if my card is expired for some reason, I just need to go get a new card. If we're being proactive and we plan ahead, we'd make sure that we got that new card before ours expired. And that's kind of what we're doing with you guys. Think of that certificate as being your card. It's going to expire soon. You need to get a new certificate out to these controllers before that happens so that you don't have an interruption in productivity. And that's pretty much what we're here to talk about. So I'm going to leave the technical detail for the guys who come after me on this particular call. But that's your general overview of what it is we're talking about. There's nothing wrong with any of the controllers that are installed. You do not have to replace the controllers that are installed. They just need a new certificate. And with that, I'll hand you over.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Chris, if you want to take over the screen.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you, Jason. Thank you for that introduction. Let me share my screen here. And okay, there's my screen. This is the new support portal with the actually dark mode, which is pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and through the slides here. So this is planning for the TLS 1.2 certificate expiration. Remember, the certificate, it's like a key. Like Jason explained, when you go, it's like your access card if you're going into a building. If it's expired, it's not going to work. You're not going to get in. If you happen to go in before the expiration, you're standing in the lobby, well, you're still in the building. So once this February 18th comes around and you have controllers that are connected using TLS 1.2 with the default certificate, they'll still be in the building. They'll still be communicating with Seeker. But if for any reason they disconnect, go offline, they try and get back in, the certificate's expired, the controller knows the certificate's expired, the server knows it. So neither one are going to connect at that point with that default certificate. So there are three modes that the certificates can be created. We have default certificates, which they are hard-coded certificates that were created 20 years ago with the technology at the time. They're hard-coded in all of our panels that do TLS 1.2. It's hard-coded on all the Secure servers, even Secure 800. The default certificate is there out of the box. And that's what most people run on because it's real handy. You take any controller off the shelf and you can bring it to any Secure system and plug it in. And the certificates match, so they automatically connect, which is great. And it's been working fine for years. Except now the default certificate is about to expire. We have host-based certificates and controller-based certificates. Now, think of this as really not host-based or controller-based, but host-created certificates or controller-created certificates. There are actually three certificates. a CA, Certificate Authority, a host certificate. Those are created by the Secure server itself. So really, host-based certificates is controller-based, controller-created controller certificate, or controller-based certificates would be controller-created controller certificates. So host-based means that the Secure server creates everything, all the certificates, for everything, for even the controllers, the keys, everything. And when you switch to host-based, it will push out all those certificates to all the controllers that's online at the time. So basically, anyone standing in the building who are connected, the administrator comes out and goes, okay, everyone, here's your new certificates. Here they are. Here's the host-based certificate. And for each person, each controller, it gives them the new access cards so they can come in after that date. The way the controller-based certificates work is that the host still creates the CA, still creates the host certificate for Secure, but it asks each iSTAR, hey, create your own certificate, and then ask me to sign it. So for everyone standing in the lobby, the person comes out and goes, okay, here's the CA certificate, here's the Secure certificate. Now I want each one of you to create your own access card, hand it to me, let me look at it, and I'll sign it and give it back to you. That's a controller-based certificate. Now TLS 1.3 exclusively uses controller-based type certificates. TLS 1.2 is more flexible. It can do host-based default or controller-based certificates. The default certificate is closest to a host-based type certificate where the server creates all of it. So the server creates all of it, whereas a default certificate, the host creates all of it, but it was created 20 years ago, and they're hard-coded. Host-based is recommended to switch to that one if your controllers are iSTAR Edge G1s or EX controllers, because they're not so great at doing a CSR controller signing request. So the server goes, hey, it gives the instruction to those controllers, hey, create your own certificate and then ask me to sign it. But those older controllers, they don't always do that very well. So sometimes those might not work. So that's the difference between the three. And this is in Secure. So if you go in there under the encryption options, you can see the three different types. Let's see, let's go to next slide. So if your system is in the default certificate mode, which panels are affected? So any iSTAR whose communication is secured using TLS 1.2. 1.3 is not impacted. If your controller is unencrypted, not impacted. If it's an iSTAR Pro, Classic, those are not impacted because those are all unencrypted. And iSTAR Edge G2 will only do TLS 1.3. So it's not impacted. However, if you have an iSTAR Ultra, G1, or G2, if it's in TLS 1.3 or unencrypted, it's not impacted. APCs obviously are not impacted as well. So really, it's anything that is in TLS 1.2 and you're in default certificate mode. So if you're in 1.2 and you're not in default, but you're in one of the other two modes, and the panel is, connected back, then you're fine. You have the new certificate, the new updated certificate. So what are your options? Before February 18th, there are several options that can be done. It depends on your situation, what controllers you have, what mode they're in. You really need to look at it kind of system by system and figure out what you need to do and what you want to do. Oh, okay. Here's a questionnaire that's thrown up. Kind of get an idea of what kind of controllers are out there. We have seen a lot of Edge G1s, definitely. So there's a couple of different things we can do. So one thing is you can switch your encryption mode to like host-based. So if you don't have any iSTAR Edge G1s or EXs, you'll probably be okay with switching to controller-based instead of host-based. And that'll probably be just fine. If you have Edge G1s or EXs, I'd say probably go with the host-based because it will force those certificates out to the controllers. That's less for the controllers to think about and do, which is good. So first option is you can switch encryption modes. That's going to pretty much work on every Secure system. It's going to work on even Secure 800. That's how it works. The second option would be you can replace your older controllers, your Edge G1s, EXs, LT, to the iSTAR G2 family, which will get you to the TLS 1.3. The third option is you can convert your clusters from TLS 1.2 to 1.3 as long as they support it. So if you have iSTAR Ultra, then you can convert those from TLS 1.2 to 1.3. There are some version requirements for doing that. Let's see, I think is that on the next slide here? No, but now I'm going to switch over. I'll come back to this. So there are a lot of documents that we have on the support portal. So when you go to the certificate expiration, there's a lot of documents here. There's a tab, there's a frequently asked questions. I'm going to go ahead and just cover those really quick here. So here's the tab. This tab is probably going to be the best thing that's going to have the most information here. It walks you through step by step doing each one of these things. The first thing it talks about is the affected products. So you can look at which controllers you have. iSTAR Pro, unencrypted, yes. Can't do TLS 1.2 or 1.3, it's not impacted. So you can kind of see what you have. So like an iSTAR Edge G2, you do need Secure 9000 2.8 SP2 because before SP2, that was not in the software. That the feature for that controller was not there. So that's why we have a requirement for that. And then on the Ultras, there's a version requirement and a firmware requirement. You need to be at 2.9 SP3 for TLS 1.3, and it needs to be at least 6.90 of firmware to use TLS 1.3. Well, if you're not at one of those two and you have Ultras, then if you're at 2.5, you can use TLS 1.2. Before that, you couldn't do TLS 1.2. It would just be unencrypted. So again, unencrypted, don't need to worry about it. TLS 1.3, if you can get there, you don't need to worry about it. So this goes into explaining a little bit more about the issues and the issues with each controller and what you can do on what versions. There's a link to the frequently asked questions, which I'll go over here in a second. Actually, I'll probably just pop over to that right now. So here's the frequently asked questions. So we've got, I think there's like 24 questions here. We're trying to keep this updated. So any new questions, we will be adding to this. These documents are updated pretty frequently. We usually get a lot of questions from these webinars, and we take those and see if there's any new questions, and we add that to the frequently asked questions. So there's a frequently asked questions document. there is now, so for troubleshooting, so kind of want to go to this. So if you do a switch modes and you do not, some of your controllers don't come back online, we do have a recovery procedures document. This will cover, once you switch, your server is then not using that default anymore. So say you get an iSTAR Edge G1, you still have some laying around, you need to put one online, and you go to bring it online, it doesn't come online. Well, it's not going to come online first because out of the box, it's using the default certificate. You need to change that. So what you have here is, okay, so we have a controller recovery procedures document, and this covers what to do. So this is recovery of a controller that was online or has not been online, and you're not in default anymore. To sum this up really short, I should probably put some pictures in here. Basically, what you do is if it's a EX or an Edge G1, you use ICU, connect to the controller. You right-click on the controller, and there's an option in the drop-down that says Request Certificate Signing. And once you click that, that controller is going to talk to the server and say, hey, here's a certificate. Go ahead and sign it. It'll contact Secure. Secure will send over the CA and the host certificate, and it'll sign its certificate, and it'll come online. And controllers with a more robust web pages, such as the iSTAR Ultra series, you wouldn't use ICU. You would actually go to the web page, and in the configuration, if you go down in there specifically, there is a request CSR status button. You click that, it will do the CSR request to the server. That's how you would get one of those back. How you would get one of those online if your server is already changed, or if some of your controllers did not come back. In absolute worst case, you would need to probably go to the controller and factory default it. For instance, that would happen if there was a password on there and the password was not known or was not working. Let me switch back to the tab here. So if we go to, so there's some prereq tasks. Here's the iSTAR controller view, which is helpful to add some of these columns, which will give you a status of what each one of the controllers is at for the encryption status, if it's at 1.2 or 1.3, if it's online, firmware version, all those kind of things. And there's also a date here, certificate expiring time, which will tell us what that controller says the expiring time of that certificate is. As you can see here, most of these are the in the TLS 1.2 on this image are the February 18th date. These other ones in 1.3, you can see their dates out at 2035. Now, the TLS 1.3 will automatically update the certificate like 3 days prior to the actual expiring date. So so TLS 1.3 will automatically just update it. TLS 1.2 does not automatically update it. So that would be another reason to eventually get to the TLS 1.3. So if you switch to host-based or controller-based, it's going to push it like 10 years out. But then you've got those 10 years to get those over to TLS 1.3, so it can do an automatic update for a new certificate and a new date. If for some reason you get all the way out there and you need a new certificate, then the method to do that would be you could do a new CSR, but you would need to do it manually from the controllers, from those TLS 1.2 controllers. So there's some variables that it suggests a change, and there's one that's required to change. So as far as solutions, we have, actually there's the three solutions here. So change the encryption mode from default to host-based encryption mode. And it explains a little bit about that. Then second one is replace controllers. Third one is you can convert the encryption mode of each cluster from TLS 1.2 to 1.3, but there's several requirements. There's version requirements. So if you're at 3.10, super easy. 3.04, it's very easy. 2.9SP1, it can be done, but it's not that easy. There are, and then the reason why we have these specific versions is there's code that is put in there that will recognize, hey, they changed this cluster from TLS 1.2 to 1.3. I know what to do with it. So if you're a version prior to 3.0.0.4, say 3.0.0.1, 2, or 3, it doesn't have that code in there. Yeah, this would be kind of get an idea for where people are at on the versions. So if you're older, converting the clusters to 1.3, it's probably not recommended. I mean, I've heard people doing it, but after every conversion, they're needing to restart the drivers and the services to get it to work, to get it to recognize that it changed, because it's just that code's just not there. A lot of people are on 3.0. Well, if you're on 3.0.4, you're in good shape. If you're on 1, 2, or 3, that code is not there. In 2.9, you would need to be at SP7, CU01. So this is probably less of an option for a lot of people. Okay.
Paul, I see somebody has their hand raised. I don't know if we can take people off of mute for this session, but if you could just put your question in the question box, we'll be reviewing those shortly.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so the first option here is changing encryption modes. Just this is what we're seeing a lot of people actually do. So this goes over step by step what to do. So we need to make a change to this. So this shows the iSTAR controller dynamic view. That's recommended, right? System variables, configure iSTAR system variables. Make sure you have the password set for each controller so you know what it is. Because if you don't know what it is and it goes offline, you're not going to be able to get back into it until you factory default that panel. You can set multiple controller passwords at the same time by highlighting a bunch or right-clicking, as long as they're the same type. So you back up your secure system, you go to options and tools, encryption options, you switch to host-based mode. To switch to controller-based mode, it's the same thing. You just check the other radio box for controller-based. And then you save it, and then the controllers at that point, there'll be a bunch of certificates created and things going back and forth. Controllers will take that and take the download, they'll restart, and they'll come back online, and everything should be fine. There's something that we're seeing a lot of that we're starting to see more of. The issues that are happening when we switch from default to one of the other certificate modes, there are actually extra network ports that are needed to be open that have not been needed to be open before. That I'm going to be adding those to the tab and the other documents. I'm going to try and get that done today. But if you look at the ports document, which you can download off the support portal, this is going to have all of the ports that possibly could be used for anything in our system. So it's going to have like everything. So there's some new ports in here that are needed. So maybe not the Edge G2 specifically, but Ultra G2. So we've got signed certificate delivery port. So 28014. That's one of them. We've got, let's see, we've got, okay. I will get that. I had that ready, but I can't seem to find it right now. Anyway, there's extra ports that are needed to be open. We found that when people switch, that most of their controllers come back online, but there are some that did not. And what we're finding is like, hey, let's check the network ports, and they're like, well, no, we know the ports are good. We asked the network people, and they said there's nothing blocked. And then we get down in the troubleshooting, and this is usually late at night and then we get engineering involved. We get a Wireshark capture. We get all kinds of different captures from server, controller. Turns out, oh, look, yes, there is something blocking it. I know there's a stigma of pointing our finger at the network. And, that's something that was pretty bad. But I think now we're at the age where, a lot of the times it probably is a network port. It's probably something being blocked. That's something that IT does a lot now. They will see a port, they'll go ahead and block it and wait to see if anyone complains. And then if they complain, then they go, oh, well, okay, I guess it's needed. We'll open it. But we really need to engage the IT and say, hey, we need to make sure these are not blocked. We've not used them before, but they need to be open between the panel and the server both ways. We need to make sure it's open. Another one is 28002, 28003, 28003. That's definitely one. 28004, and then so there's a couple others. But if you look through here, you can see. So certificate signing, iSTAR driver used for the request for certificate signing. Yeah, I mean, if your panels, if you're using the default, this is never going to happen for 28003. So it's not really ever going to be used. But now we are going to be using it. Okay, so the other methods here. So if you convert from 1.2 to 1.3, here's the instructions on doing that. On 3.10, it's super easy. You right click on the cluster and you say convert to TLS 1.3, and it does it, and it comes back online. I have a couple of videos I'm going to show for each one of these. I'll be doing that here really shortly.
Should we pause and take some questions? Because I know we have a bunch in here too, and a good portion of the videos are posted. So I just want to make sure we have time to answer some questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, if you guys are looking at the questions and you see any that, because I have not been looking at the questions. So if you see some, go ahead and fire them away at me.
For now, I'm going to skip over the ones that have answers. But again, just so everybody's aware, if we see new questions that are not in the FAQs, we'll make sure to update that document after this call. So one here is, we have Secure 2.4 with multiple edge panels. Your slide said that they are unencrypted in this version. Is that correct? Are they affected by TLS 1.2?
If they are unencrypted, they are not affected, and they wouldn't be in 1.2 because they're unencrypted. 2.4 was it?
2.4. Yep.
Yeah, I would have to look. I'm not sure off the top of my head at that version, what was there, but I would think that they would be unencrypted for an iSTAR Edge.
Okay.
But if that's the case, so if they are encrypted and in TLS 1.2 at 2.4, then the only option really there is to change the host from default to host-based or controller-based.
Okay. The next one is most of our systems ICU from server cannot see panels or is blocked from the customer firewalls. How to update G1s?
Okay, so my recommendation would be, at least for when you're doing this, get IT to unblock the ports for ICU so that you can do any recovery that's needed from the server. If they refuse to do that, then your only option is to roll trucks out to the physical site where that controller is, plug in directly, and use ICU there. And then probably once they see how much that might cost them, they might go, well, we can open those temporarily.
Okay, great. Next one, join late, so I apologize if this was already answered. Does this change impact legacy CK721 hardware?
No, it does not. No, some of the CKs do use an encryption, but it's different than this, what we're doing here. So it won't be affected.
Okay. In one area, you mentioned that 290 SP3 is the minimum, yet now you say 290 SP7. Was there two different items for those service packs?
Yeah, so what it is, so for like an Ultra, to use TLS 1.3, 29SP3, I believe, is when we introduced TLS 1.3 into the Secure 9000. Before that, you didn't have TLS 1.3. So that's why there's the requirement for 29SP3. And the other one is, so if you're converting to, so that's if you're like taking it and you're putting it online for the first time, right? You can do 29SP3 with 690 firmware. Now, if your system is already there, say you're at this, but your controller is in, the cluster is in 1.2, and you want to convert it, right? So if you want to do that, then we do have the requirement for, let me find it, sorry for all the scrolling, for the versions. So the instructions to convert from 1.2 to 1.3 are for these versions. If you're not at these versions, there's no instructions here to do that. So if you're at 29SP3, we don't have instructions to do that. It's probably more similar to the 29SP7 CU01 method, but that method is a lot more work, and I've heard that people have to restart services if they're not at one of these three versions. Does that make sense? So this right here is for converting. This is the requirement for converting. This is the requirement for having it there. So you could put a brand new Ultra online 29SP3 and TLS 1.2, configuring it from scratch. But going from 1.2 to 1.3, these other ones are the requirement for the versions.
Okay. This one along the same lines, can 290 SP7 CU1 be converted from a client PC, or does it have to be done from the application server only?
You can do this. You can do them from the client. It's all just in the admin workstation. You may need to connect to the controller via the web page or ICU, so you want to make sure that you have access from that client workstation.
Okay. Was the TLS 1.3 bug fixed? Someone said that they had an update. They did an update and the expiration was a year and not tens of years. had to go to 30 panels to default and reprogram to get the new 1.3 to work.
I do remember TLS 1.3 issue, which was the year, which it did expire in like a year. I know that was fixed. I don't remember off the top of my head what version that was fixed, but I know that was fixed. I believe that was a host issue because the host created those and sent those out, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's fixed now. That was a while ago. If that's the specific bug. I
Would
don't
that be
remember.
covered in the tab?
No, the tab doesn't cover all bugs that are related to TLS. We don't have those in there.
Alex, if you could just take down that question's contact details, and we'll get back to them with the correct rev.
Real quick, you can actually find that. So if you go to products and then Secure 9000, Secure IQ, and if you go to software downloads, there's this really cool thing right here. If you go down just a little bit, this is the Secure 9000 and Secure IQ fixes and enhancements. So if you click this, this will actually give you basically all the release notes combined into one document that it's not opening for me though. There we go. So if you look at this, it'll actually list all the different versions back down to 2.9 base. And so you can actually see the different fixes, the bug numbers, and what was fixed. So you can come in here and just search for, 1.3, and it'll give you, all the things, related to 1.3 and when they were fixed in. So that's really nice. There's also one here for feature enhancement, so you can just look at what was changed and updated and new things. Okay, sorry, I don't want to get too much off.
Okay, yeah, no, that's perfect. That's where you can find it. Okay. All right, let's do one more, and then I'll let you get into some of the videos. We have a standalone application server and a cold standby DR application server. Database is hosted on another server. If we set host-based encryption, I understand the panels will get a new cert from the server. If we fail over to our DR server, will new certs need to be generated and delivered to the panels, or will the certificate still work?
They will not. It will still work. The certificates that are created are actually stored in the database. So wherever your database is, that's where those certificates will get stored. On startup, they are pulled out of the database and generated into local files on the application server. So there's no need to worry about that. So that's good.
Okay. All right. I'll let you keep going, and then we'll try to hit some more questions in a bit.
Okay. Let's see. We were on talked about changing encryption modes. We talked about the 3.10 conversion. 304. I'm actually just going to kind of skip these because I'll show a quick video on that. Wanted to show some of the other documentation. Like here's a letter. Is it from engineering that explains the issue we're having, the issue with this expiring certificate, why it's expiring, what we need to do. And this is good because it's a short, brief, to the point. You could take this and hand it to the customer. It'll help explain what's going on better to them instead of handing them like the tab that's full of all kinds of stuff. So that's good. That's on the support portal as well. I showed you the frequently asked questions. We do have a conversion flow chart, which might help too, to figure out what you need to do. So this will show you, what controllers you're at, what you can do. If you're at 2.9 SP7 CO1 higher, but not 3.0 and higher, are you at 6.9.0 firmware? And then it goes into the procedure to do it. to convert these over to 1.2. And then if you have these older controllers which cannot do 1.3, then this tells you, okay, well, then what we need to do is we need to make the switch from default to one of the other modes. And then it goes through the process of how to do that. That works with any version of Secure and how to do that. So that's kind of handy there. This is the recovery procedures document, which we talked about already. This is the ports document. Talked about that. All right, now I've got a few videos to show. I'm going to try and skip through them a little bit. I just want to show you what the process looks like. So here we have, this is the 3.10 convert it from 1.2 to 1.3. Let me just skip ahead a little. So here we go. We're at the, here's this G1 cluster. And let's see, I think the right arrow speeds, no, plus arrow speeds it up. Okay, so you right click on it. It's going to ask you, do you want to change this from 1.2 to 1.3? You say yes. It will then change the encryption mode from to TLS 1.3 completed on that one. You can see the LCD from the controller at the top. It's rebooting. I'm going to speed it up a whole bunch. Booting. Okay, it goes offline because it's rebooting. And accepted. All right, I think it does a second reboot there. And then it will comes back online, takes a download. There it is. And I swipe my card and you can see that it worked. So yeah, sorry, that was really, really fast there at the end. But that's the 3.10 process. Here is the conversion of 1.2 to 1.3 in 3004. It's basically the same. It's almost the same thing. What you need to do is it's going to edit the cluster. You're going to change the drop down from 1.2 to 1.3. Then you have to go to the controller and go and change it from 1.2 to 1.3. And then it's going to do the same thing. So now it's going to restart, connect back. So it's like basically like a couple extra clicks. So 3004 is still pretty fast for changing that over from 1.2 to 1.3. All right, I'm going to skip this video because it's basically just coming back online and it works. Now there's one more. So here's the 2.9 SP7 CU01 method for converting 1.2 to 1.3. This is very painful because you have to edit the cluster, take it offline. You have to look for associations for areas and keypad commands. You have to remove the doors or the readers, the doors from the areas from the keypad command. Then you have to, after you remove those, speed it up some more. Remove the controller from the cluster, then you can do the drop down to change it. Then you save it, go back into it, add the controller back. Then you go to the controller's web page. You then tell it to do not 1.2 anymore, do to 1.3, save it. It's going to come back online, but then you have to go back in and reconfigure all of your areas and all of your keypad commands that were related to that cluster. So the 2.9 SP7 conversion process is a lot. Now at that point it's done, and at this point they're just waiting for it to finish coming back up, and I'm going to skip the ending of that part. Now I'm going to show a little video on doing the conversion from default to host-based. This is probably what most people are going to do. The videos online are not exactly these that I made, but they cover the exact same process, the same stuff. And it has a nice little AI voiceover. It sounds better than my voice. So here, controllers online, so we can see the date to 18/2026. And then you go options and tools, you go to encryption options. Now, there's the three options: default encryption mode, controller based, and host based. So I'm going to switch to host based. You can't see it, but the OK button's at the bottom. You hit OK, you hit save and close. Then it's going to, you can see it says switch certificates, downloaded the CA controller and controller certificate to the controllers. So it's downloading all the stuff to all the controllers now. And then it restarts the S tunnel. And of course, this isn't a perfect world. I'll speed it up. And then everything, it goes offline, and then everything comes back online. As you can see, it's coming back online. It's getting the new certificate expiring time, 2045. Now, at this point, any controllers trying to connect that are using the default certificate out of the box are not going to work, and you would need to do the CSR from the controller when you go to put it online. That's it for the videos.
I'm going to share my screen one more time to show the support portal, because I know there was a lot of questions about where to find all the information. So if you're new to the support portal, you are welcome to join both as an integrator or an end user. There's different logins when you fill in if you haven't been there before. Give me 1 second. I'm sharing my screen. You should see that now. When you log in, right here, one of the hot buttons in the front is the iSTAR 1.2 Certificate Expiration Hub. There's all kinds of information here. So you have the tab, you have a letter. So if you need details about what are the 3 proposed options for mitigation, it's listed here. Rick Foki helped develop this letter. There's the flow chart, which Chris had shown earlier, that shows the different methods in more detail. There's, I believe, 3 different videos right down here. Yep, here's the different videos. So you just got to scroll down a bit and you'll see them very similar to what Chris detailed today to walk you through. And the FAQs document is right here, which will give you a lot of great details of common questions that have been coming in. All right, so hopefully that helps a bit, guys. Let's try to get some more of these questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to see where I left off. We have some customers with a site server 2.4, so we do have to replace the server first with connected iSTAR Edges G1, and after that we can switch each controller to host-based certificate. And then go ahead.
You should, I mean, you'll be able to switch to host-based certificate. It should not have a problem no matter what version of Secure you're at. Even if you're on Secure 800, this functionality exists in the Secure 800. The switching to host or controller based.
Okay, so they don't need to change anything. They can make the switch. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The biggest thing to watch out there for there is, TCP ports. Make sure they're not blocked.
Okay. From a sales perspective, is there a cheat sheet list of controllers on the website I can defer to for the TLS upgrade? Maybe that little chart you were showing earlier.
Yes, it's in the tab.
Okay, so let me go there real quick. I think it's
should be.
Is it this one?
No.
No.
I think that one is the more overview document, which will get you your kind of high level, what controllers do I need to concern myself with. The tab goes into very specific detail about which controllers at which version and which service.
This one?
Yes. There you go.
Okay. All right. Somebody said, I think I missed it, but we are running 290 SP6 and you made mention of a CU version. Is that maybe listed in this chart I'm showing?
So
290
if they're running 29 SP6, we are, so what was mentioned was the SP7 CU01, and that has the code in the background to understand when you change a cluster from 1.2 to 1.3, it'll understand what you're doing and it'll be able to switch. If you're not on that SP7, so if you're on SP6, it doesn't have that code. So if you do the procedure for 29 SP7 to make the switch to TLS 1.3, what's going to happen is the seeker isn't going to understand that. And I've heard reports of, at that point, people just restart all their services and then it starts working because it refreshes. Oh, this cluster is 1.3 now. It's kind of like it doesn't really refresh knowing what that is until you restart the services. But that code is in those versions it's listed.
Okay. All right, the next one is, if we go to host issued certificates, the older panels must go to 1.2, but newer panels can stay on 1.3?
Yes, so if you're newer panels, if you have ones on 1.3, and you do a host-based switch from default to host-based, unencrypted controllers and anything on TLS 1.3 are not going to be affected. They're going to stay online and continue to work. They're not going to go offline. Switching that, the encryption modes to host-based is only going to affect the 1.2 controllers.
Okay. After changing encryption option to controller-based, will all the panels go offline until their clusters are updated to TLS 1.3?
Sorry, read that one to me again, please.
Sure. After changing encryption option to controller-based, will all of the panels go offline until their clusters are updated to TLS 1.3?
No. So if you switch to controller based, so that controller based, that is only. Let me show this. I just want to show this image in the video real quick to help. All right, hold on. Let me share this. Visual seems to help me a little better. Come on, share. Okay, so this right here, this tab is TLS 1.2. So whatever you do here is only going to affect the TLS 1.2 controllers, and they're going to stay in TLS 1.2. They're just switching from the default encryption mode in TLS 1.2 to controller-based encryption mode in 1.2. So they're still staying in 1.2. They're not changing to 1.3. This is just keeping everything in 1.2. It's just changing the certificates that's used. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. Do changing any of the system variables ahead of time risk affecting connectivity, like auto sign cert non-FIPS?
That one will not affect. If you're in default mode and you change that to yes ahead of time, that will not hurt anything or really change anything. That's telling the system if something comes in 1.2 that wants a certificate, do a signing request, to go ahead and auto sign it. But because you're in default mode, that's never going to happen. There is another one for TLS 1.3, which is already set to yes. So 1.3 automatically by default is set to auto sign yes. It's just for some reason the TLS 1.2 auto sign is set to false. And if it's not changed, what's going to happen is controllers are going to come in, say, hey, here's a certificate signing request. Then the server waits to say, okay, I'm waiting for an operator to actually right click on the controller and click the drop-down option that says accept signing request.
Okay. Would it be easier to go from 2.9 to 3.10 than convert to 1.3?
Go from
2.9. So they're
sorry,
on
go
2.9.
from
So should they upgrade to 3.10 before converting to 1.3?
it would make it easier is for the conversion process because it's more like just 2 clicks. But you have to look at a lot of other things too. Are you using any integrations? Is your hardware, does it meet the requirements of 3.10? Because like from the original like 2.9, the software and hardware requirements are different than 3.10. So you have to really look at all those things holistically to try and figure out like what your options are. But I mean, if you're just purely looking at if you're at 2.9, well, we could go to 3.10. It would make it easier because then it's just a few clicks. But you have to look at all the other stuff.
Okay. Okay, but the panels will continue to control access as normal, just won't be able to make access changes. Is that correct?
It depends on what regard. Are they talking about if the controllers are offline?
I think so.
If the controllers are offline, they hold a database of the card holders, clearances, and all those kind of things. So access should work just as normal. The events aren't going to get to the monitoring station because they're not connected to the server. And it really depends on your events if they're downloaded to the controller or not. So if they're not downloaded and you have like an unlocked front door Monday through Friday 9 to 5, if it's not downloaded, those are not going to work. So most of the functions of the controllers will work if it's not connected to the server.
Okay. Do you know what the ports document is called? Somebody was struggling to find it on the support portal. Do we know the name of the document?
You know, I got to say, I did struggle a bit myself trying to find that because when I typed in the ports, it showed me like a port for what was it? It showed me a port for like 2.7. So if I go here and I type in what port. Okay, well now it's giving me different results. I'm going to ask them to add that ports document to this section, the certificate expiration, so it'll show up here. I'm going to ask them to do that today.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, but to find it, you basically go to the 9000 Secure IQ section, click on documentation, and then if you look at sub products and then 3.10, then it's down the page a bit. And then for some reason my here it is right here, port assignments. It's there, but I'm going to ask them to put that, make a link, copy that link over there to the certificate expiration area.
Okay. I know we're running a little bit over time, but I'll just try to have Chris and the team answer a few more if you guys are still hanging on. This one says, if we try and upgrade the cert after this date and they're still using the panel cert and the panel is not connected to the server as the cert expired, are we still able to change the panel to use a server hosted cert?
Technically, no. But what you would do is you would do the recovery procedures, which you would do the CSR, certificate signing request from any of the panels that are not online. And the server will recognize, oh, okay, it's creating its own certificate. So it actually puts that into a controller-based type mode instead of a host-based mode, because technically the server didn't create that controller certificate and hand it to it, because that's a host-based mode. So if you're in host-based mode on the server, you can technically be in either host-based or controller-based. So if you do a request from that controller, it'll work. To actually do the host-based recovery, you have to actually put in a USB to the server, copy the key that was created by the server to that, carry that USB to the controller, plug it in. So it's easier at that point just to do a CSR, and it'll work.
Stefan is helping us out. He's been on the portal pointing out where things are posted. So the port assignments come up under manuals, and you could see the different versions that Chris was referencing earlier. But we will move this document to the related documents, the TLS 1.2 section, just to help for clarity. All right, let's take two more here. What are the pros and cons to cluster-based versus host-based encryption?
Cluster-based, well, cluster-based and host-based are two different things. So if they mean like
controller-based.
Right. So really, like I said before, the difference is who creates that controller certificate. If you do the host base, the host creates that controller certificate, sends it to the controllers. If you do the controller-based certificate, the server requests the controller, hey, create a certificate and ask me to sign it. The downside is that controller-based certificates, when you do that switch, it sends that command right then to those controllers. The older controllers don't handle it very well, the Edge G1s and the EXs. If you do a hey, create a certificate and ask me to sign it, it does much better with the host base where it's forced, it's pushed out to those controllers. So that's really the only downside. There is a little bit of a security downside to doing host based, because it does send the private key over the network that one time. But other than that, there's really no upside or downside. The host base sends that private key once. The controller base does not. So it's more secure, but it works better for the old controllers if you do host based. So you could just put to controller based and then just go hit every controller and tell it to do a CSR if it didn't work.
Okay. Are we aware of issues with 3.001? Somebody tried both host and controller-based encryption and had several failures. Only the TLS 1.2 not coming online, while all the 1.3 would work okay.
Yeah, so when you switch to host or controller based, it does not affect the 1.3 and it does not affect the unencrypted. I think there was an issue. There was an issue for sure in 3.01 that was fixed in 3.02. By the time we found it, we were already at 3.03 and it had been fixed in 3.02 and 3.03. So we found it, but it only exists in 3.01. For some reason, when you do a switch, it doesn't work.
It looks like Enrique followed up with some additional details in the chat, so that's great.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We are going to have to close the call, but we will continue to do these once a month to help. Hopefully this is helpful to answer your questions live and take away some of the scariness. It's not a rip and replace item. It's really just a certificate update, depending on what your IT team is mandating as far as your TLS option. So thank you again, both my team members on here and everybody for joining.
Thanks, everyone.